Hi there, how are you? My name is Dani Henderson. I'm the founder of Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection, the greatest disclosure event on our planet, announcing that very soon for 2024. I've also been sharing with you my book, Angels, Demons, and Aliens, and I've been reading stories, true life experiences that I've had to validate you, to give you more information, but also to bring insight into areas that we might not ever imagine that we would see an alien, a demon, a spirit, an earthbound, a lost soul, or anything else that we might call paranormal, an anomaly, or something that we maybe don't really understand on our planet. And so I'm going to bring to you a final story today, and it's called The Ocean. Now, before I start, I want to shout out to Vicky. Vicky, I'm wearing your beautiful handmade tiara. I feel like something from Lord of the Rings in it. I know that you worked hard and you blessed every single crystal, my love, and I appreciate you very much. And so I'm wearing it for this broadcast here for you. And a little bit of Christmas lighting up here as well. Again, we're looking into the pagan, the druid, the Christian, the whole understanding of our life and the systems that we live under and what the Christmas lights actually represent. And you'll find 3 or 4 different explanations. But what I'm going to do for you today is bring you an understanding of an actual live experience that I had, which I like to only speak from personal physical experience. I think for me, that's the most important thing I can do for myself to see if something is real or true or not, or my fantasy or my imagination. And I've never heard of anyone else. I'm sure others have had a similar experience, but I've just never heard of it. And maybe you haven't either. So I thought I would share my story of The Ocean in Angels, Demons, and Aliens by Dani Henderson. You can get this book on Amazon. It's chapter 18 in the book. During my separation and divorce, I decided that I was going to face all my fears in life one by one. Separation and divorce will do that to you. My biggest fear at that time in 2007 was the ocean. I had no real reason to fear it. Like millions of people, I'd seen the movie Jaws, and this didn't help, but my fear was deeper than that. And I didn't want to be owned by that fear anymore. I found a great scuba diving instructor, and I just went for it all. I did a ton of training in the swimming pool, and not even imagining I'll be able to swim the lengths that you have to prove that you're good enough to take the diving exam, which is called the PADI, P-A-D-I. My instructor was called Bill. He was a small Scottish man and we got on great. I shared with him I was clairvoyant and we had several conversations about life. Bill has since passed over and I found him to be a really tender soul and I enjoyed my brief friendship with him. The day of the exam to qualify as a scuba diver came fast. And we were due to go to an area in La Jolla, California, where many take this exam in the ocean. There were 2 other men taking the exam. One was a huge nurse called Jessie, and the other was a Marine called John. And I want to go back a little bit here to say that La Jolla, California, it's in the county of San Diego, right on the ocean, of course, the West Coast. And I, a year earlier or 2 years earlier, did a paranormal investigation. I took a camera crew into the cave store. And in that cave store, you go in and it's this all kind of shabby, sheddy thing that's part of a building that's been built on and improved and knocked down. And they sell all different kinds of things in the cave store. And then there's a stairway that goes down, and it was hand chiseled by 2 Chinese boys that were found as stowaways on one of the ships that came in. But a lot of Chinese people were stolen, kidnapped from China. And what's really brutal, one of the many brutal things that people have done to each other on this planet is when they've enslaved the people of China, they didn't care that the Chinese people at the time were told that the gateway to heaven is in China. And so these poor people that were stolen from China used to build the railways in California and other areas. Some of them died never getting home. Awful, isn't it? Awful, the terrible things that we do You know, once we pass through the light, of course, we know that half the things we're told are just complete lies. But I thought that was important because it's very historic, La Jolla. It's spelled Jolla, which is Spanish. And so it's pronounced Joya, not Jolla. When I first moved to San Diego, I was like, oh, I want to go and see what's in La Jolla. And until someone tells you it's La Jolla, you sound like a total muppet that you don't know anything. But sometimes we need to be told these things. So there I am with these two men, Jesse in the big marine, and we're getting ready to take our exam. We got to the shore in La Jolla and waded in backwards with our tanks, our diving tanks on our backs, hoping we wouldn't fall over, as walking backwards with long flippers is a bit tricky, but it's impossible to do it well going forward. I know this because I tried it to Bill's delight. Bill placed the float in the water once we ventured out quite some way, and he dove down 60 feet to anchor it. It's the student float. Which let anyone in the whole ocean area see that there were students taking their PADI exam. So you're on the cliff, you're on the shore, you can see this orange or red float way out in the ocean, like, you know, good old kind of 100 yards out. And that's us diving down 60 feet minimum to the ocean floor to take our exam underwater, because that's what you do. We're there to take our exam. So the swimmers and divers and anyone else that sees the float that clearly depicts divers at present are expected to respect the whole area and keep their distance. Once on the ocean floor, we had to kneel down and take off our masks. 60 feet down, I was terrified of this part as my brain told me I was going to drown. But when you put your mask back on and you press your finger on the mask on a certain point, the water that's inside it simply drains out. So if you can imagine, you're 60 feet down underwater, kneeling down, you take your mask off under the ocean, and then you have to put your mask back on, and logic is telling you you're going to die. You kind of forget you've got a regulator in your mouth and you've got a tank of air, so you're not going to die. But you think that your eyes are going to fill of water and it's just not going to work. Then you press, I mean, physics is amazing underwater. Press this little area and the water comes out. It's like magic. It's just like magic. That's what happened. It was so great. I love learning things like that. It's just so wow. You just never imagine it until you're actually in the experience, right? So my brain told me I was going to drown, but when you put your mask back on, you press on the mask, at a certain point, the water just drains out. There are other exercises like taking the weights out of your diving jacket and putting them back in, because when you drop down, you need to be heavy to drop down. So you put weights inside your diving jacket. There's tons of pockets to weight you down. Some divers need that to help them drop down faster or deeper. And the whole time you're regulating with your regulator in your mouth, through your nose, you know, and regulating your air in your tank to do what you want to do as a diver. Took the weight. So after the different items being desired were fulfilled, or these different tests that we had to do, Bill, our trainer, gave us all an underwater signature, a thumbs up, to let us know we'd all passed and now we could relax for a bit. So we were right near a massive drop off on the ocean ledge, and it seemed like millions of fish were swimming down. It's so incredible. If you could imagine, you're swimming, those of you that have never done it. First time I did it was in the Maldives in the 80s, and I couldn't believe the thousands and thousands of you swimming along, bobbing along in the ocean, minding your own beeswax, and all of a sudden there's the drop. And it's like floating over multi-story buildings. It's just the most incredible feeling in the body, and the mind is saying you're going to die, you're going to fall off a building, but you're in water, so you're buoyant. So in La Jolla, California, county of San Diego, here we are, and we're looking out to the edge, and it was millions of fish swimming down to the very dark depths of beyond. You couldn't see the bottom. It was like another world. And as I took a moment to swim out over the ledge, it was like I was falling off a multi-story building. A strange feeling indeed, and one that I did not care for. The four of us swam around for a bit, and then I noticed two divers swimming towards us. They were right out over the ledge, like way out. So we're still, the ocean floor is, thank you very much, right there. The sandy bottom of the ocean is right beneath our feet. me and the three guys. So we're swimming along and the edge is kind of out there. And then these men start coming the opposite direction. We're going this way and they're coming this way. And they were swimming towards us. They were right out over the edge, a few feet away, swimming in the opposite direction. They were in black wetsuits and they looked very official to me. I'd never seen people in like jet black. I thought it was kind of cool and like, oh, like, oh, what, who are they? Who are they? So they were over the edge in black and looked official. I raised my hand to wave at them and they both looked at me but didn't respond. I then remembered there are several underwater signals that divers do to each other to say, hello, are you okay? I'm going up, I'm going down, and other signals that you learn. So I tried to do the, are you okay? And again, the two men divers looked at me with no expression and or recognition or response to my signal. I thought perhaps there was a hand signal I needed to learn, and I vowed to ask the boys when we got, oh shit, back on dry land, sorry, back on dry land. And so that's what I did. As I saw the men swim by, one of them leaned over and grabbed his diver buddy's wrist and tapped his diving watch. Watches like this tell you many things: the depth, the direction. They're just two elements. So, and they're quite big. The diving watches are quite big. Like my regular watch is big, like a diver's watch, because I do like a big old watch if I'm going to wear one. And so there's one, that guy's going forward and the guy on the other side of him, furthest away from me, literally leaned over and grabbed his diving buddy's wrist and was tapping. And they're both looking, because they're looking for direction. That's why they're tapping the diving watch. That's why they were doing that. So I decided to move on and try not to make new friends underwater, because they clearly weren't interested. And then eventually we made our way back onto dry land. While we were taking off our wetsuits, I asked the boys if there was some kind of underwater etiquette I needed to learn, because the two divers we'd seen didn't respond to me. I actually thought they were a bit rude, a bit snooty. I thought maybe they thought, oh, bloody students in my ocean. You know how some people in authority do behave like that, and they do think like that. They all looked blankly at me and asked, what divers? I laughed and said, the two divers who swam by us. Again, they looked blankly at me and at each other, as if I was some strange loony woman. Bill then stepped forward and whispered for me to tell them about my abilities. I told the boys I was clairvoyant, and again, they looked blankly at me. It was then I realized that the two divers I'd seen, solid, as real as any one of us, were actually dead. They were dead. They were spirits wandering the depths of the La Jolla Cove, and they did not know they were dead. But something in them knew that I would see them, because no one else I was with had. I never imagined I would see spirits under the ocean, and I was certainly not looking for them. My only focus was to pass the PADI, P-A-D-I, the diving instruction to get your license to be able to go scuba diving, and conquer my fear of the ocean, conquer my fear of sharks and jaws and all the rest of the things that I decided were to be terrified of under the water. I felt so emotional in that moment as I realized that there are souls in the water swimming around like those two men. And when I pondered more on what I'd seen, I realized that they weren't wearing masks. And I thought back about the two divers 60 feet down, way over the ledge of the deep, swimming by me. They weren't wearing masks. They didn't have regulators and tanks on their backs, or flippers, or gloves. They simply had black wetsuits on, and their faces and heads were completely open. It didn't register down there. I just didn't register it. It wasn't till I went up and then I recalled in my mind what I'd seen that I realized, oh my God, they weren't wearing any equipment. They had nothing that would preserve life down there. They only had their wetsuits on. I stood facing the ocean and I prayed over the water as Bill told me that many men and women have lost their lives right in that area. The Navy SEALs train there and other military personnel. Some dive down too deep, too fast and lose oxygen coming up. And there are other reasons why they might drown in that area too, due to miscalculations. Also, it is said that no one actually knows the true depth of that particular ocean shelf in La Jolla, California. Now, there's an island, I used to live on the island, it's called Coronado. Coronado is also known as the Crown Island. Now, when Queen Elizabeth, the queen that just died, her dad's brother abdicated because he was supposed to be the king, and he was in love with an American woman called Wallis Arnold. She'd been divorced, and of course everyone's very snooty, about how it should be a virgin for the king and all that nonsense. So anyway, he abdicated with his lover to Coronado. And there's a big house right opposite the ocean there. It was painted grey last time I was there. Big kind of mansion thing. I went to a party there once, a children's party. They had horses in the front garden. And it's called Crown House. Anyway, there's something else for you explorers who are putting together the things that are happen and have happened on our planet. We were told that Wallis and I think it was King Edward went to, or King George, I'm sorry, I forget right now. I really don't have any interest in royalty, but they went there, and we were told they went to France, but they also went to Coronado, California. Interestingly, half of the island of Coronado, California, which is an extortionately wealthy place. It's so expensive to live on Coronado. Half that island is a military nuclear base, underwater base, on land base, military base, land, sea, and sky. And every day you would see the war machines flying, landing. Something there also, as we are in the event of disclosure. These areas, I'm telling you, some of the mysteries and the lies and the hide behinds that we haven't been told. Interesting where we're placed, isn't it, when we live somewhere? So one thing I didn't put in the book, I don't think, I'm going to share it with you now, that when I saw Bill the next time, my instructor, he gave me photographs to look at. And he said, Dani, did the men you saw down in the ocean, did they look like this? And they didn't. He'd lost friends that were in the military that had dove down and had never come back up. They think the oceanographers, the measurers, the people that measure the tables of water, etc., it is said that that area could be up to 900 feet in depth. There are many that believe it is deeper. It is said that no one's ever actually explored to the very bottom of that. You're always going to have people that say the opposite, but I heard this from military personnel to my face, not second or third hand. And I think and know that as we are in disclosure, full disclosure, however we bring it, in the ways that we care for humanity to bring it, that we need to be doing this drip, drip, drop, drop, but not so much drip, drip anymore. More like bloody drop, drop, like drop it, bang, drop it down, and then give what you've got. Don't embellish, don't exaggerate, don't deliberately take people off to the left, because every piece of information, every thinking, let's say it's 93% right and the other 7% is complete nonsense. Don't go into the CIA program or the FBI. No one's listening to those guys, and rightly so. But every single thing that even people that come up in the system or a system, that they're told this is what's happening, this is the reality, this is what you have to believe, there's still a lie in there, because it's not one single system that has every single piece of the puzzle. It's all been deliberately splintered apart and segued over here and changed over here. So be mindful of that. And for yous who are in the military, you know these areas that I'm speaking about. You know Coronado Island, you know La Jolla, you know about the diving that goes off on that ledge there. You know that it's in front of the Seven Sisters Caves, like I said earlier, where I made my Psychic Secrets DVD. where we discovered the little Chinese boys who'd hollowed out the staircase going down. It's very haunted in there, and it all goes out into the wide ocean in that area. Again, so I had no idea that these beautiful souls and other souls can be lost in that way. I'd never thought about it. So I sent as much love and strength as I could muster to all the souls in the water. It's very emotional. I remember being so emotional, like horrified and emotional and sad, because these men were just swimming around. They just were there. I asked for the angels to come and to create a bridge of light to show the lost souls a way home. And I hoped that my small gesture would maybe in some way help. I have dove since that time and never seen any other spirits, but I was offered to do a television show, to be dropped in the ocean over wrecks and ancient cities blindfold, and to be filmed sharing what I could see, sense, and feel in this situation. I like the idea of this, and that I would be able to bring love to other souls in the ocean. The show never came to life, but it would have been interesting to use my abilities in this way. You never know, it might still happen. I also need to share with you that the exact location we drove to, 200 meters from La Jolla Cave, when we turned around facing from the ocean, we could see the 7 caves, the 7 sisters where I'd taken a film crew down through the cave in the open cavern. So again, we never know when we're going to come across a lost soul, a wretched soul, an earthbound. An earthbound, a good way to describe an earthbound, sometimes it's like the old lady that I actually met in Coronado in this little house I was renting that was right up against the military base. And I wake up one night and there's this old woman sitting on my bed. I felt the weight of her. I felt her physical weight. And I'm sitting up and there's this, she just had her back to me. She's wearing a grey cardigan and she was just so forlorn. And she's just sitting like this. And it's all telepathic. I really wanted her to turn around. I wanted her to, I was so earnest. I was a lot younger. I was so earnest to try and save every soul I saw, which isn't always possible. But she didn't think for a moment that I would be able to help her. Maybe she was just looking at the youth, the youngness I was then, and thought I couldn't do anything. But she was an earthbound because she'd been told her whole life that she'd go to hell, she was worthless, she was nothing, had no value, which of course is a lie. Everybody has value. And she was wandering and wandering and wandering around. Anyway, I actually got help from a lady called Laura that I'd met in Kauai the next day. And we did so many prayers in that house together. And so many souls came. And as my eyes were closed, we were praying. I just remember seeing all these beautiful, beautiful souls just who had been trapped in that area, leaving. And what I'm sharing with you is all around the time the old lady came first. I think I mentioned her in the book. And then the diving came off because I was actually still married at that point. But yeah, it's really interesting. And, you know, sometimes you have to be careful because as I shared with you yesterday in my story yesterday on my channel, Dani Henderson, that we went to a house where a 15-year-old girl was so sick in her body that she had to leave ballet school. And it turned out there was a demonic entity. It wasn't even a person who'd been evil and died. It wasn't even a being that had attracted other dark earthbound souls to it that also were scared to go to the light because they'd been programmed. It was a mass entity, a moving, alive entity that was sucking the life force out of this little girl. And during the investigation that I did with another person, I saw this beautiful little boy. As I straight away go, oh yeah. Well, then the next second, as I linked in instantly to the energy, it was what we call a mimic, a mimic. And a lot of us ignore. We're like, no, it's a child. We do that with people as well, and we really shouldn't. Like, we get it. We get the instant reading, the instant resonance, the instant frequency of someone when we see them. I also told you about, that story is called The Demon and the Ballerina. I also told you about the boy the little boy that was tortured as a little boy in this big house in Chelsea in London. And he'd been abused by these staff in Edwardian Georgian era. And he had received brain damage from the abuse. And they used to shove him inside this little food hatch pulley. Anyway, I don't want to give too much of that story away, but it just goes to show you that when we saw this spirit who is now grown in the spirit world, because sometimes they continue growing, sometimes they go back younger, sometimes they revert back to childhood. So you've got to be really mindful about what you're seeing. But sometimes we see something that's so terrifying immediately, and we immediately, and sometimes we just need that extra millisecond, a quantum second, to really get the charge and the full read on what it is that's being presented to us. I also told you the story of the haunted cottage in the woods, where a couple, Steve and Sarah, lived way, way down in the woods. I mean, you could drive your car into the wooded area in Sussex in England and get out and go down and down and down and down and down into the woods. It was so down far in the woody woods. And on rainy days, it was a disaster. You're going to slip on your ass at any time. But way down there in the woods, that cottage was over 200 years old. And it attracted so much paranormal activity. And I went there and investigated, and some really, really incredible, powerful things. And one of the things that I'd never, ever seen, something happened in that bedroom. There was something in that bedroom, in the main cottage bedroom, that I'd never seen in my life. And that's why it makes me so joyful to put my stories, my experiences in this book for you, Angels, Demons and Aliens by Dani Henderson, that you can buy. Well, Christmas is coming, so it's a good stocking filler. But it really is a journey of true life experiences that have helped already so many people. They go, oh my God, I didn't know anybody else had experienced that. I have, and it's very, very helpful. But anyway, I digress slightly. So that's a collection there for you to go. And if you don't have the $20 to buy the book, you can just go on my channel, and there's at least 4 of the main stories there. I think they're all equally important, actually. But when I did the one yesterday, I just thought, I need to include the one in the ocean, as many of you are on your spiritual quest and you want to see and be made aware of where other spirits are. Now, me and Nikki Allen, the beautiful psychic medium that many of you have come to know through my channel, and of course through her own channel, she is a big deal in Britain, and we are going to be filming in Britain this year some of our paranormal investigations, and we are both scuba divers. So there will most likely be a scuba diving episode. And it's interesting, I was tested years ago in 2010. These videos are on YouTube from 2010. That's 13 years ago. So it's nice. I didn't just pop up a year ago. And like many of you didn't either. But some of you did. And that's all right too, I suppose, as long as you tell them the truth. I was blindfolded, and I was taken to locations in London, and I literally had to feel where I was. I didn't even know I could do that. And I couldn't believe. I assumed that my senses, my reading senses, my clairvoyance, my seeing, my clairaudience, my clear hearing, my clairsentience, my clear feeling, my claircognizance, my clear knowing, would all guide me out here, and I could read out here. But none of that happened. When I was blindfolded and that sensory perception was taken, I went inside. I was inside the body, and it is very quiet in there. I will just tell you that. So as you are on your journey, exploring, be safe. Do not do a Ouija board unless you want to risk losing your actual soul, because the global, spiritual, universal, planetary war that we are literally in right now, and many of you know that is the truth, the goal is your soul. The goal is to trap your soul. And a Ouija board, best and quickest way to do that. Yeah, truly. The mantras I use are Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ. I use that as protection mantra. I also say things like, I rebuke you, I bind you, and I cast you out. I rebuke you, I bind you, and I cast you out. And there are other beautiful protection mantras that you can use from all over the world. I love also Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. And I will just leave it to you to continue your explorations. I'll see you later this week. I'm going to be having on George H. Lewis, the great prolific astrologer and artist. He'll be on. I'm also going to have the one and only, the global physicist, Dan Winters. He will be coming on the channel. We'll be going deep into some entomology, some physics, some real vibrational word frequency, things that are happening right now. I'm going to have Jeannie Jablonski, the great animal communicator. I think we're going to bring her Labradoodles on. She's going to show you how you can connect, because a lot of you are so stressed. Your animals are getting sick because they're literally absorbing all your stress and strain. We need to help you bring some balance into the home. Ginny will be here. And I'm also going to be playing with my friend Laura Eisenhower. She is the great-granddaughter of the former President Dwight Eisenhower, who was deceived. And as we know, historically, we've been rewriting the history books and putting the history right. And of course, there are still people trying to jump all over there, trying to get their oar in, trying to put their word over it. You're going to get that until the last fart of this war is over. So me and Laura Eisenhower will also be hanging out on my channel too and having a catch up. All right, I'm going to send you lots of love. Have a beautiful week. I'm so excited to bring these people to you. I hope you enjoyed this final story, The Ocean, chapter 18 in Angels, Demons and Aliens. Sending you love, and I'll see you soon.